Today, I'm going to talk about life in the diaspora. As many of you know, that these days people are moving across the world in search of greener pastures, in search of a better life. I happen to be one of those people who moved to the UK over 3 decades ago, and I'm still here. And do you know, not a day goes by that I don't think about home, that I don't think about my life in England versus my life in Africa. I miss home. I want to be home, and yet my life is based here. And I think over the years, just being away from your family, being away from your loved ones can have its toll, which is why I want to talk about some of the pros and cons and the highs and lows and the experiences that have shaped what I'm going to talk about today. And I hope that it may get other people thinking differently and may get other people to share their experiences to be able to help somebody. But my personal opinion is that life abroad or life in the diaspora is not a walk in the park. The cost that we pay with our lives of moving abroad, is it worth it? For some it may be, for some it may not be. I'm going to be sharing my highs, my lows, and from my personal perspective and my personal experiences, having lived in the diaspora for the last 3 decades, in the UK to be specific. We all know that we are now living in a world where people are moving from one country to another in search of greener pastures, from the developing countries to the developed countries. And there's a huge price that we pay for moving away from our native countries to move to other countries, especially Western countries. Firstly, the cultural differences, the ways of life, and just being split from our families can take its toll, in our mental health. And I've found that's been the case for myself over many years. In fact, I think the first few years in this country, I was all very excited about being in this country. We have what you call a honeymoon period where you're just really taking everything in, soaking it in. The reality hasn't even hit you about what's really going to happen to your life, or the changes that are going to occur for this period of time. And those changes can actually have their toll on somebody's mental health, particularly being split from families. I think is one of the hardest things that we experience after that honeymoon period, because the honeymoon period is the period where, like I said, you're very excited. And a year or two down the line, when you're looking at your finances and you're realizing, oh my goodness, I've worked for 2 years, I don't have any savings, because you're living hand to mouth, you're saving, the bills are expensive. And for some people, it takes time to be able to really get that reality sinking in, because they'll still be enjoying buying, being able to afford all the material things which are offered in some of these countries. And particularly in the UK, you are able to afford to buy yourself clothes, to buy yourself food, to be able to give yourself a lot of things that money can buy when you've got a job, whereas in other parts of the world that might be a struggle. But the disadvantages of being in countries where you have to work so hard, different cultures, is that you have to work so much that there is no time for you to be able to relax, to be able to afford that life. And not only that, we are stretched, some of us, with having to send money home to our loved ones or to support our siblings who are living in various parts of the world, and that's a reality for many. But this money within the Western economies that we earn, by the time we've paid all our taxes, you'll find that there is not a lot left, although you'll be able to buy food, everything you want, or dress yourself, or be able to buy a few luxuries. But the mental health is so affected because you have had these changes. Don't get me wrong, the UK and other countries in the West are good, and they offer us opportunities to be able to achieve all the things, all the dreams and aspirations. But for me, it's having to be away from my parents. My parents have aged significantly in the last 30 years. And I feel like there's a part of me that has been taken away from this life that I was born to live, whilst I was able to be there and be able to afford all the material things that money could buy me. I've lost out on family. I've lost out on that bond. I've lost out on that meaningful connection with my loved ones, with my family. And thankfully for me, over the years, I've been able to assist some of my siblings to come here so that we could be together. But even then, whilst they are here, they've lived in different parts of the country. So I don't get a chance to be able to see them as often as I would like. Don't get me wrong, life in the UK or in any other part of the world is actually great. But if your plan is to be able to stay abroad, because we all go abroad for different reasons. Some actually are escaping from their various countries and they want to go and stay in their host countries. But for some, they come here or go abroad with the plan of working for a few years so that they can return. And the reality on the ground will be as such that they're not able to meet those targets. They're not able to return home the time that they thought. No matter how much they work so hard, the books will not be balancing, the money will not be enough. Between one thing and the other, they find themselves working back to back, day and night, to be able to fund the lifestyle in the West or within their host countries, whilst they're trying to support family members and siblings who are abroad. And after a while, that will take its toll on our physical health, on our mental health, and that loneliness of being away from our loved ones whilst trying to fit in environments that are very difficult to fit in because of cultural differences. Sometimes the way we speak, the way we are not easily accepted. So emotionally, it's a fight. Every day you get up to go to a job, to work so that you can support your family, but you are really being misunderstood. You find yourself getting into trouble. Sometimes it's for good reasons. Sometimes it's just because, you just get blamed for a lot of things, or because you say something wrongly, or things don't come out in a certain way. It takes its toll, drains you. The bullying, the harassment, the lack of recognition is what many go through in these lives abroad. And sometimes if you want to take a holiday to go and see your family, you've got to work 7 days a week so that you can go and see them for 2 weeks and then you come back. And what I've noticed over the years is just watching my parents or my dad and my mom age for so long gets me to actually meditate and think, what is life? What is the meaning of life? Is it the material things that we can afford, or is it the meaningful connections, the bonding that we have with our loved ones, the laughter, the joys? You know how people mingle and mix in some parts of Africa. It's the handshakes, it's the laughter, it's the laid backness, and it's just really the sense of belonging in an environment where everybody looks like you, where everybody talks like you, where you really understand the culture. And that's suddenly ripped away from you during that time that you're transitioning to a new country, and you've lost a big chunk. I just feel like there's a big gap of my life that is missing. And that puzzle will never be complete in this life for as long as I spend my life in a different country, or else keep talking to myself every single day that I've got to change the way I think and maybe accept the fact that I'm always going to be that in-between person, that I'm going to live in the UK, although part of me is African, and I feel like I'm dragged in both worlds. And now I'm actually battling with the reality that those goals and dreams and aspiration of actually fully moving back to Africa may not happen. Logistically and financially, there are some challenges that one has got to overcome before you can actually make that transition, especially having lived in a foreign country for many years, because we've got bills to pay, we've got rents to pay, you've got to leave every day, you've got to buy your clothes. And if you were to build a house in Africa to move, how are you going to sustain that lifestyle when you finally make that move? So there's a lot of planning. And I know that there are fewer or many people that have been able to do that, and they're comfortable, they've made some wise moves. And that's what's required for one to be able to make that move to go back, if that's your goal in the first instance. Because some people are going to get the shock of their lives. After 3 years of being in this country, you'll find that yes, you've afforded everything that money can buy you. But unfortunately, to be able to make that transition now, to go back to your country or even plan and live requires a lot of hard work. And like I said, that some of the working environments are tiresome. Some people's jobs are so physical. Some people's jobs are emotionally draining. And to be able to juggle that, this is where the mental health kicks in. For most people, some it takes longer than others, some it happens quite quickly. And for me, it's been a long journey to be able to do it. And it's only now that I'm doing what they call a cost benefit analysis on my life to be able to realize that now in my 50s, how many years am I going to be able to have in the country that I'm going to live in whilst I'm sustaining a lifestyle here? And at what point am I going to make that move as to where do I actually settle? That remains to be seen. But it doesn't mean that the thought will go away of the clock ticking whilst my loved ones are aging, whilst other loved ones have gone across the world. Some we may never see, some will see briefly for the shortest periods in life, and some will probably only ever see them via social media. It's tough. And this is something that I just wanted to check in with some people who have moved to this country. Is the price worth paying? Is it worth it moving away and being separated from people that we love, from our dear ones? That connection. What is important to you? Is it the money? Is it being able to afford day-to-day commodities and be able to, pay your bills? But whilst being away from some people who mean a lot to you, is being split, being split from your parents or from your siblings is almost like a part of you has been taken away. Is the price worth paying? Are you enjoying it? Do you like that kind of life? Because for me, I've struggled with it for so long. And like I said, I'm getting used to the idea, but it doesn't make it easier. Yes, I do have a number of siblings in this country now, but again, the challenges are they live in different parts of the countries. We have never really planned it in such a way that we can be closer to each other, so that we can, share time together, so that we can support each other with probably childcare or, just being able to pop into one another's houses for a meal, for dinner. We haven't. So you will find that with many people or many Africans in the diaspora, just the way that we work, the jobs that we find just do not afford us the luxury of being in the same area. But I feel that if you've got your siblings, maybe your mom, your dad, your brothers and sisters, and you really want to be able to form that bond, that family union in the diaspora, you've got to be intentional about making sacrifices, about deciding to join each other as we age, especially as we age, because getting older in the diaspora or in the UK or in the Western countries with the climates that they are, it can be very lonely. It can be very, very cold and lonely if you don't have anyone who's going to check in on you. And I think if you can't afford to go back and be with the loved ones that you left, at least make an effort with those that are closer to you to really be able to build that community and live nearer to each other. If you can stand each other, if you can cope being around each other, I feel that's the only way to be able to cope or get around this situation that's quite terrible and quite lonely. Or if you do decide you want to go back, and if you can afford to be able to go back, then there's a lot of planning to be done. And the earlier you start planning, the earlier you don't get carried away with spending your money, the earlier you realize how the economies in the Western world work, the taxes and the money, and you live within your means. Then you may be able to put some money aside to be able to build that vision of being able to go back to being with your loved ones. But if you don't do that, honestly, most people will end up being stuck in this country, not by choice, but because circumstances will force them. The finances will not balance for them to be able to make that move or even live life in both countries, where you may have a home here and you may have a home in your respective country. That may be a challenge. So really, I really wanted to hear from those people that are in the situation that I'm in, just to find out, have you made any plans? What are your plans? Do you think that is worth it, that splitting from your family just so that you can afford your life? What are you sacrificing by living life in the diaspora? How are you coping How are you coping with that transition? Maybe you may be able to encourage somebody who's watching a program, somebody who's going through the same situation that I've gone through, who's at the crossroads, confused and stressed out, battered, burned, tired, and just really missing a big chunk of my life that I feel has just vanished by me being abroad. So yeah, let me know your thoughts and share in the comment section. If you've watched till this end, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Till the next video, it's Shirley here. Thank you so much. Bye for now.